My name is Michael Bamberger. I've been involved in development evaluation for almost 50 years now. I started working in urban community development in Latin America in the 1960s. I think one of the most important lessons I learned for evaluation was that low-income communities have developed a range of coping and survival strategies which are essential to their continuing as a community in very difficult circumstances, and these often involve mobilizing very significant resources of economic, information, child support, which are critical to their survival and which many evaluators fail to understand, as do program planners. So very often evaluators look at how people respond to development programs from the perspective of the donor agency, and fail to understand both how the programs are perceived by the communities and also the kinds of resources which they can bring to these programs. I was particularly impressed by the tremendous resources of women and particularly female-headed households, and how they're able to cope in these extremely difficult circumstances, and the very wide range of resources which they're able to bring to these programs and to their general survival. And that, again, these are resources which are very personal, interpersonal relations, support to neighbours in times of difficulty, and very often these are just, evaluators fail to understand these. So I think that's a critical lesson, that you really do have to spend a long time with communities in order to understand their perspectives, the way they approach programs, and very often the programs have very different outcomes than what you've been anticipating. This, over the last few years, has become a central theme of realist evaluation. In terms of some of the future directions of evaluation, I think there's going to be a gradual increase in the emphasis on the importance of participatory evaluation, of ways of giving voice to a much wider range of groups affected by development programs, and particularly making sure that the voices of the most vulnerable groups are heard. This is very often a challenge. It doesn't fit very well into a lot of development planning strategies, and one particular example of this, which has struck me very much in the last few years, is that the development evaluations are essentially, most of them are designed to assess whether programs achieve their intended objectives, and pay very little attention to understanding unintended outcomes of development programs. In fact, if you look at a lot of evaluation strategies, they are systematically designed just to answer the question, has the program achieved the objectives which were defined by the funding agencies? And even the so-called gold standard evaluation methodologies like randomized controlled trials, if you look carefully at them, they really are not able to capture unintended outcomes. They just answer with a great deal of statistical provision whether programs have achieved their intended outcomes. So this has some very serious consequences, and hopefully in future there will be more of a realization and more effort to capture what is actually happening, and not just to look at what it is that the donors hoped would happen and which they're interested in. So I think this will be a a very critical challenge. A lot of progress has been made in the past few years on looking at gender differences in program outcomes. The progress has been disappointingly slow, but this is an area where progress is being made, and I think there's a much wider recognition by many donor agencies now of the importance of understanding a gender perspective. Related to this is a greater focus, hopefully, on equity-focused evaluations of understanding the different voices, the different perspectives of different groups involved in programs, and understanding how all of these groups are affected by the programs. A final point perhaps to mention is the the gradual recognition of the complexity of development and the need to change the very basic linear approaches to evaluation, the pre-test, post-test comparison group designs, which have been very current in the past. So I think that also is something which is gradually emerging, and which will be hopefully more important in the future.